Today I'm sharing another weekly reading update. Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I just wanted to give you an update on what I've been reading for the first week in October. And it was a great start to my October reading. I am participating in several readathons, but my priority has been Victober, because if you follow my channel, you know that I love Victober and it's the most wonderful time of the year. And so that is my priority for the month of October. But I did read some other things too, and so I'm going to talk about those. So the first one I read was A Series of Unfortunate Events, The Wide Window by Lemony Snicket, and this is the third in the series. I really enjoyed this one too. If you follow my channel, you know that I'm going to try to read through the Series of Unfortunate Events. The first two were rereads, and this one I had never read before, and it was a great one too. In this one, the Baudelaire children are sent to live with Aunt Josephine, who lives on this lake. And there is this library, which of course I loved, this large library in the house that overlooks the lake. And so it has this wide window overlooking the lake. And of course, that was wonderful to me. But in this story, it is part of the unfortunate events, and you find out why. Aunt Josephine is an interesting character in that she is afraid of everything. So that made the story fun, because as they are learning more about Aunt Josephine and their new home, they find out that Aunt Josephine won't cook, so they have cold cucumber soup because she's afraid of the stove. The phone rings, she won't answer it because she's afraid of touching the telephone to her ear. It's a lot of things like that. Just super fun and interesting, and I enjoyed this one, so I do plan on continuing to read through the Series of Unfortunate Events. And then I read The Secret Adversary by Agatha Christie. This was the first in the Tommy and Tuppence, and it was published in 1922. I think this might have been Agatha Christie's second novel. I'm not sure, but it was early in her career. And it was great. I really enjoyed this one. I loved being introduced to Tommy and Tuppence as young people. They were schoolmates, and so they're meeting for lunch and they're chatting about where they are in their new adult lives, and they're both short on cash. So Tuppence has the idea, let's advertise for an adventure to get paid for it. So they put this advertisement in the newspaper that says something like, we'll go anywhere we need to go and do whatever we need to do, basically, which is super dangerous in the scheme of things. But that's how the adventure begins. I really enjoyed the energy of this one. I loved Tuppence in this one, just like I did in By the Pricking of My Thumbs. Now, By the Pricking of My Thumbs, which I read just recently, is creepier and spookier than this one. This is more just an adventure. It's more of just this mystery, adventurous mystery kind of journey. And I loved that. And I could read these all day long. I really enjoyed this fun story. I also loved, at the beginning of this one is the dedication by Agatha Christie, and I loved it. Let me read it to you. It said at the beginning of this story, "To all those who lead monotonous lives in the hope that they experience at second hand the delights and dangers of adventure." So when I read that, I thought, yep, that's me. I live vicariously through these adventures. So I just loved the way that she dedicated that to us as the reader. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And then there was another quote in here that I had written down I wanted to mention because I loved it. One of the characters in this story tells Tuppence, "Never tell all you know, not even to the person you know best." And whenever that happens, I start questioning everything as the reader. And so after this character said that, it kind of changed my mind about several things. And so as I'm going on, I thought, yes, I know who did this. And I was so proud of myself because I thought I have finally solved a case. I've finally solved an Agatha Christie. But by the end, I was wrong. So anyway, it still is fun and I love reading them, but I have yet to solve any of these cases. So I do recommend The Secret Adversary, and I plan on reading the next one in the Tommy and Tuppence soon. So then I read The Little Lame Prince and His Traveling Cloak by Miss Mullick. This was published in 1875, and it is a children's book, and I read this to fulfill the prompt of disability or chronic illness, because in this story the prince, as a baby, I think they're taking him to his christening. The nurse drops him, but she doesn't tell anybody that she's dropped him, and he doesn't cry, so no one knows it. But later on they find that he was injured by this, this nurse dropping him, and he is not able to walk after that, and his legs do not develop properly. So time goes on, and in this story, he is, due to different circumstances, he is sent away with a nurse, another woman, and they are left in this tower far away, and he is presumed dead. I love that about it because it has those fairy tale elements. At the beginning, there's a godmother that shows up. It kind of reminds me of how Sleeping Beauty begins. Then, of course, the tower where they are banished, and of course, there's this magic cloak that he is given by his godmother, and through the story he is able to take the magic cloak and fly around and see the village and experience life that way, because otherwise he would just be stuck in this tower for the rest of his life. But this godmother gives him this cloak and provides for him basically for the rest of his life. So he's able to take the cloak, and he goes out and he learns about the world by flying over on his magical cloak. I did enjoy this because it had all those fairy tale elements that I love at the beginning of the story and throughout with the magic cloak. And there's some other things that the godmother does that were pretty interesting, that were fairy tale like things, elements. So I did enjoy that about it. But it was preachy. There are a lot of moral lessons to learn through this story, and they are so obvious. So it's like, he's to learn to forgive these people, for banishing him. He's to learn to have courage, to be compassionate, which are great moral values. All those things are wonderful, but the way that they're conveyed in the story are overly preachy all the way through. But I will say that I think as a child, I would have ignored that and just really enjoyed this story for what it is, a fun, fairy tale-like adventure of a kid on a magic cloak. So for me, I think I would have enjoyed this as a child, and that's who it's written for. As an adult, I'm a little more critical about it, and I see it as a little overboard with the preachiness. So that was The Little Lame Prince, and I read that to fulfill the prompt of disability or chronic illness for Victober. I also read The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is a collection of short stories. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that I have only read a couple of Sherlock Holmes because I really didn't like the first novel. I didn't like it all. And my son recently gave me The Hound of the Baskervilles to read, and I loved it. So then he said, well, you need to go through the short stories, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Start there and see what you think of the short stories, because I love short stories. So I was like, okay, I'll try that. And since these are, in fact, Victorian, I thought I would read them for Victober. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes was published in October of 1892. So they are, in fact, a Victorian. I loved the variety in this collection. All the stories are so different. And really, I don't know what I expected, but I assumed it was going to be all these murder mysteries. But a lot of these stories don't even have murder in them. They're just like robberies or pretending to be someone else, or those kind of things, trying to trick somebody or con somebody in some kind of way. So I enjoyed that about it. I was surprised at all the variety of cases and how funny they were, because a lot of these are just humorous situations. They're very funny, and they were just a lot of fun to read through. So I wrote down a few of my favorites were The Red-Headed League. I really enjoyed that one. The Man with the Twisted Lip and The Adventure of the Speckled Band. Out of the 12, those were by far my favorites. But I must say, I enjoyed every story in this collection. And that's saying a lot, because usually in a short story collection, there are one or two that are kind of like, even if you love the collection as a whole, you don't usually enjoy every single story. But in this one, and there's only 12, but in this one, all 12 were great to read. I found them to be a lot of fun, and I have changed my mind about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So one of the Victober prompts is to watch an adaptation. And so after reading these, I did watch a couple of the adaptations, the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes. I watched a couple of those episodes and they were great. So I look forward to reading more Sherlock Holmes and then watching all of those adaptations of all of the stories that are on that series, because my son has the whole collection of the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes, so I look forward to reading and then going back and watching them too. So that was a lot of fun. And then my favorite read so far in October is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This was fantastic. Now, I will say I started this before October 1st because I knew I had a lot of books on my Victober TBR. So I decided to start this the last week in September. So I've been reading this for a little while now, but I could not stop reading. I thought, okay, it's over 600 pages. This is going to take me the end of September all the way through October, but it didn't, because you cannot stop reading this. This is fantastic. If you want a page turner, you need to read The Woman in White. So what this is, oh, let me look at the publication. It was published in 1859, and it said when I looked it up that not only was it a sensation novel, but it was an early example of a detective novel, and you soon figure that out. Anyway, it is sensational. You start off with this guy, I think his name was Walter. Is that it? Yeah, Walter Hartright. Walter Hartright is this young art teacher. And he has this friend who just, I think he saves his life. I think he saves him from drowning or something. So he tells him, he's like, you know, I'm indebted to you for life. Well, the friend finds out about this. He knows these people that are wealthy that need an art teacher. So, of course, he comes highly recommended by this guy that he had saved. So that's how it starts. Well, on the very first page, as he is getting ready to the next day go to his new job as this art teacher, he meets this woman in white, and she's like in this white gown, and they have this little conversation. Well, after she goes, she's like asking him for directions kind of thing. So after she leaves, the police come up and ask him if he's seen this woman in white, and he's like, okay, you know what's going on. And they say this woman has escaped from an asylum. So it really gets interesting after that, because you're like, okay, is this woman crazy, or is she escaped because she's not supposed to be there? So anyway, you're already like, from the first page, you are invested in the story. So then he leaves and he goes to this estate and he meets the two sisters, Laura and Marion. And the story goes from there. And there are connections all throughout of all these different people, all these plot twists. I can't say too much because I don't want to ruin the story for you, but it is fascinating. There are so many things that happen in this story that you do not see coming. You have to keep reading. I could not put this book down. And so I was so surprised at how fast it was, how fast paced it is, especially being, you know, it's over 600 pages and from the 1800s. But this one, if you want a great place to start with Victorian literature, this is it. Last year I read The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, and I loved it. And when I first started this one, I thought, okay, The Moonstone's still going to be my favorite, but I think I'll enjoy this. No. This blew The Moonstone out of the water. I love The Moonstone. I still think it was a fantastic read, and I'm glad I read it. But this is amazing. Please pick this up and read it. And so now I want to watch the adaptation, because I do think there's an adaptation for this, And that is one of the prompts, which I'm going to watch as many adaptations during the month of October I can, because I love period dramas. But I'm going to look that up. I think there is one. If you've watched The Woman in White, the adaptation, let me know in the comments where I can find that one. So those are the books that I have read over the first week of October, and it has been a great start to my Victober reading. I do have some other books that aren't Victorian that I'm going to be reading throughout the month, but mostly I'm going to be reading for Victober. I'm buddy reading right now Lady Audley's Secret, and it's a sensation novel too, and it is wonderful so far. And then I'm also participating in the group read for The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. That's my first Thomas Hardy. I wasn't sure how I would like it, but so far I'm keeping up with the reading, and I am really enjoying that as well. So those are the books I've been reading. What have you been reading? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.